You're familiar with the opening words of Charles Dickens' A Tale of Two Cities. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. Classic lines that most people actually don't really think all that much about. Kind of like how they don't think about the rest of the sentence that makes up the entire first paragraph of that novel. It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. It was the age of wisdom, it was the age of foolishness. It was the epoch of belief, it was the epoch of incredulity. It was the season of light, it was the season of darkness. It was the spring of hope, it was the winter of despair. We had everything before us, we had nothing before us. We were all going direct to heaven, we were all going direct the other way. In short, the period was so far like the present period that some of the noisiest authorities insisted on its being received for good or for evil in the superlative degree of comparison only. What we have here is a fantastic example of juxtaposition. Just say that a few times and get it in your brain. Juxtaposition! 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 It's a clever way to draw readers' attention to the way things are similar or different, to compare and contrast, without spelling everything out. But what's the benefit of using juxtaposition? How does it work, and why is it better than explaining things more thoroughly? My name is Cale, and today we learn why juxtaposition is more than just a position, in today's Words from the Muck. In the opening of Dickens's novel, each of the contradictory phrases are memorable because they are in a position directly next to their opposites. By doing this, Dickens forces the reader to ask questions like, wait a minute, how can it be the age of wisdom and the age of foolishness? Which is exactly what he wants you to ask. These things can't go together, can they? But they can. And they have. Juxtaposing these phrases is a shortcut to explaining the complicated, complex, controversial, and confusing political atmosphere surrounding the time of the French Revolution. Now, Dickens could have opened his novel with a much more clinical, fact-based approach to explain the setting, and that would have taken a lot longer. But through his series of contradictory, antithetical phrases, the reader's left with the feeling of the setting, which in this case is just as good, if not better. Juxtaposition works through proximity. It's the closeness of the two ideas that creates connections, which then become associations. We saw this just last week in Mark Twain's Pone Opinions in our episode on parallel structure. We know why Catholics are Catholics, why Presbyterians are Presbyterians, why Baptists are Baptists, why Mormons are Mormons, why thieves are thieves, why monarchists are monarchists, why Republicans are Republicans, and Democrats, Democrats. We know it is a matter of association and sympathy, not reasoning and examination. We already discussed the parallelism that Twain's throwing down in this piece, but when we look at the passage with juxtaposition in mind, we can get something else out of it too. Twain positions all these religions next to each other, then he positions thieves next to them, then monarchs. Twain wants us to notice this. He wants us to ask, wait, why are thieves put in here with a bunch of churches? Why indeed? Maybe because all of these churches are just as guilty and reviled as a thief might be, and maybe because thieves have as little to do with their own creation as religious people and politicians do. Either conclusion is worthwhile because the juxtaposition fosters conversation. Because something seems incongruous, we ask questions about it, and we're led down a path that the writer started for us. But juxtaposition isn't always so easy to spot. Writers don't always just mash their ideas together like puzzle pieces that don't really seem like they fit. Let's take a look at James Baldwin in his A Talk for Teachers, as he interrogates America's ideas about identity. So many people really appear to believe that the country was founded by a band of heroes who wanted to be free. That happens not to be true. What happened was that some people left Europe because they couldn't stay there any longer and had to go someplace else to make it. That's all. They were hungry, they were poor, they were convicts. Those who were making it in England, for example, did not get on the Mayflower. That's how the country was settled, not by Gary Cooper. There's so much going on here. There's some parallelism, some allusion, some ascendaton, but where's the juxtaposition? Baldwin is juxtaposing ideas, the heroic image of America's identity and origin, with the less mythic reality of convicts and refugees. Putting these ideas in close proximity requires the reader to interrogate their own biases. What myths about my country have I never questioned? Why do I cling to these myths? Who perpetuates these myths and why? Even if the only thing Baldwin gets you to think is this even true? Then he's accomplished something awesome by getting you to question your own thinking, your own beliefs, your own reality. Juxtaposition can be like a rhetorical ninja, always there, just sneaking around through your words, just ready to strike! A seemingly simple sentence that seems to be establishing context or describing the surroundings can be used to compare and contrast ideas. For instance, in Best in Class, Margaret Talbot uses a description of Sarasota, Florida to heighten the conflict that is at the center of her essay. Best in Class examines the struggles that go along with rewarding academic excellence, specifically with the title valedictorian. Her opening case study recalls a graduation fiasco in which a student, through a loophole in the school handbook, had broken away from the other students with the same GPA to become the class valedictorian. But before Talbot gets too far into the story, she hits us with this line. As we drove past sugary white beaches, high-rise hotels, and prosperous strip malls, the principal told me that the ensuing controversy effectively divided the school and community. If the line was just good imagery, then it would seem out of place here, but Talbot's description of Sarasota is juxtaposed with the conflict. Fancy beaches, expensive hotels, and lots of shopping imply an affluent community with everything going for it. But it is in this space that we see the division and the frustration. So the juxtaposition heightens the conflict while also taking a bit of a jab at a very, very first world problem. Let's finish with The F Word by Firoozeh Dumas. Dumas relays the frustration she and her family experienced after moving to the United States as children. I feel like it's worth saying that before we even look at this, I expect to mispronounce most of what I'm about to read. And I'm going to be okay with that, but only because my ignorance actually kind of adds to the idea of this piece. My cousin's name, Farbad, means greatness. When he moved to America, all the kids called him Farthead. My brother Farshid, he who enlightens, became Fartshit. The name of my friend, Neger, means beloved, although it can be more accurately translated as she whose name almost incites riots. Her brother, Arash, Giver, initially couldn't understand why every time he'd say his name, people would laugh and ask him if it itched. The brilliance of this introduction is actually not how it positions the real names and the pronunciations with what other people started to say. The brilliance is in the position of the meanings of the names with what they became. Greatness, he who enlightens, beloved, and giver are lost to the mockery and insensitivity of an ignorant culture. What does this juxtaposition do for the reader? We are shocked, and we are convicted, and we are a little bit amused because we can't pretend Dumas doesn't have a sense of humor when she writes a piece called The F Word. It's a fantastic introduction that gets us all to start asking questions at the very start of the essay. Juxtaposition is placing ideas next to each other, and in doing so, asking the reader to look at those two ideas with scrutiny. Maybe the juxtaposition shows that the ideas are more similar than you would have expected. Maybe they're more different than you expected. Maybe the side-by-side catches you by surprise, which can make you laugh, or cry, or throw a table. Maybe it just makes you think about stuff for a good long while. However you use juxtaposition, its use as a rhetorical skill can direct a reader's mind to focus on concepts that they didn't even know could be connected. And that's the beauty of it. Juxtaposition challenges our assumptions and asks us to reconsider what we've always thought. Thanks for watching Words from the Muck. If you missed last week's episode on parallelism, you can check that out right over here. And if you want to see a couple of English teachers nerd out about writing AP essays, then check out our analysis of an Abigail Adams piece. We'll be back next week with more wordly wisdom, so until next time, farewell, good people.